cameraman husband and I considered the best way to experience Scotland's fabulous and rugged landscape was to walk a long-distance trail. This one proved to be ideal, and we met all kinds of travellers and experts as we hiked into the Highlands. The West Highland Way was founded in 1980 and is one of the most beautiful walks in the British Isles, and sometimes quite a challenge for us. It stretches for 95 miles from the suburbs of Scotland's largest city, skirts Scotland's largest loch, past the head of Glencoe to the foot of Scotland's largest mountain.
You start off in Milngavie on the urban fringes of Glasgow, and you gradually walk through a variety of scenery. So you come through the valley of Dumgoyne with the Distillery and all the area around there, really scenic. And all in front of you can see Conic Hill, and Conic Hill is on the Highland boundary fault. So you're actually going from the line where the lowlands and the highlands actually meet. You move on a little bit and you go all the way along the east side of Loch Lomond, and you do that for quite a considerable time. Then you go out into a totally different environment. You go out into the wilds of Rannoch Moor. Open landscape, but really beautiful in its own right. That freedom, that sense of isolation, and that's what people like when they're walking the West Highland Way. And you go up, probably which is one of the steepest bits, over the Devil's Staircase, and great views down Glencoe, and then you drop down into Fort William, and you've got the end of your route. You're at the bottom of Ben Nevis, the highest mountain.
It's best to start at the southern end and get the benefit of walking more and more into the Highlands and seeing these dramatic changes in scenery and experiencing the weather. And when you have done that and you've got wet and eaten alive by midges, come back and do it again, because it won't be the same again. It's always different.
One of the interesting things I would say to walkers is, if they're making all this effort to walk the West Highland Way, I'm amazed at how many people are walking with their head down, looking at the path in front of them. I would ask them to think about lifting their head up more often and enjoy the wildlife that's about them, the bird life and the fantastic scenery. I actually stood aside in the West Highland Way once to let a party through, and I frightened blazes out of a few of them, because quite honestly all they saw was a pair of legs suddenly appear in front or beside them, and they hadn't realised I was standing there. So lift up your head and enjoy your walk and see what's about you, and you'll enjoy it.
Our film chronicles an eventful journey in 5 parts, recorded in May during exceptionally dry weather. Rather than carry our heavy baggage with us to each guest house on the way, David and I opted to use one of several baggage carrying services.
Hi Audrey, Deborah and David. Hi.
Hi. Okay, I've got 2 labels to put in the bag with the bags inside.
Okay.
Right, we've got 95 miles.
You certainly have, and it's going to be most enjoyable.
Thank you.
So those will go all the way to each place that we're stopping, and
Yes, they certainly will.
we just
Each
when we get
accommodation.
there.
Yeah, they'll be there waiting for you when you arrive each day.
Milngavie is a charming suburb of Glasgow, complete with its own marketplace. There is an information centre for walkers at the Iron Chef, which also runs a baggage carrying service for walkers on the West Highland Way.
Well, this is the official start of the West Highland Way. This is the beginning of a 95-mile trek from Milngavie in Glasgow to Fort William through some spectacular scenery. We've read a lot about it, we think we're prepared, and it's time to do it. Only 10 minutes away from the shopping precinct, and already it's pretty and quiet, and you feel like you're getting away from the city.
2 miles later, we are crossing part of Drumclog Moor and into Mugdock Country Park. We made a short detour to meet Maggie, one of the Mugdock Country Park rangers.
The West Highland Way runs through Mugdock Country Park.
It runs through the southern edge of the country park, so through Mugdock Wood but also through Drumclog Moor. It's actually part of an old avenue. It's a metalled road that was put in and called Craigallien Avenue and runs all the way from Milngavie to Craigallien Estate, which is next door to Mugdock. And I think what it was originally put in for was just access to the house. Craigallien Estate's got a big house in it, and so they would be able to get back and forward to Milngavie.
How long has the wood been here?
People have looked back records and they've found written records of it in about 1600. So we presume it's been here on this site since then, so therefore it's termed as an ancient woodland. And that's the reason why it's designated as a site of special scientific interest, or a SSSI. Because it's been here a long time, there are lots of different woodland plants associated with it, and it's got a huge variety of them, which makes it quite unusual in this area. There's also dry oak wood areas, there's wet alder wood areas, there's boggy birch areas, so it's all very interesting. And the mosaic of it all, along with sort of big open glades, mean it's just a really good place for wildlife.
What can the visitor see and do at Mugdock Country Park?
If you're up in the visitor centre area, there's plenty to do. There's anything from cinema to theatre. There's also a lovely cafe, and there's a really nice garden centre and Victorian walled garden. And then of course when you come further down this direction, then you've got Mugdock Castle, which is soon will be open every weekend, and it's going to be able to go up the tower and you get the superb view right over Glasgow of the from the top of the tower, so it's well worth a visit.
Maggie said there were 80 hectares here. It's really lovely, and all the sound of water all around.
Dog walkers, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Oh, look. That must be Dumgoyne.
Yeah.
What a lovely shot.
The range of hills behind Craigallien Loch, the Campsie Fells, terminate here at Dumgoyne, a plump, conical hill that stands isolated from the rest. Although Dumgoyne is not the highest of the Campsie Fells, by virtue of its position, it commands a wonderful view of the area. These chalets were built after the Second World War as holiday homes. This is the first of many information boards which contain advice and history information and a helpful map which tells us we have a very long way to go.
Oh, look. The mountains we're heading towards.
There's Ben Lomond in the distance. We seem to have passed through an unseen gateway as the landscape dramatically changes here, with the volcanic plug of Dumgoyne in the foreground, with the Highlands in the distance as a taste of what is to come. There is a different atmosphere here. This part of the West Highland Way is the remnant of an important route during prehistoric times. A distinctive feature about the West Highland Way is the fact that it links historical routes into a seamless, fascinating and enjoyable long-distance trail.
This part of the way was the Blaine Valley Railway, which was an optimistic idea of early commuter line. It was opened in 1867 and was extended as far as Aberfoyle, but eventually closed in 1959.
Across the meadow is Glengoyne Distillery. The crystal clear soft water flowing off Dumgoyne Hill is used by the distillery to make whisky. The business was started illicitly by a local farmer who grew barley for cattle feed and used leftover grain to make whisky for family and friends. His circle of friends grew, and he was making a lot of whisky. So a government licence was obtained in 1833, and Glengoyne has been making whisky legally and paying tax ever since. Nowadays they produce a range of mature single malt whisky.
We get lots and lots of walkers. On rainy days it's super because they can come in and get a break from the rain and have a dram of whisky to warm them up and set them on their way for the rest of their walk. But on a sunny day it's great as well because they can come for a tour of the distillery and then sit about in the grounds here and have a picnic before setting off for the next stop. So the first ingredient that we need to make whisky is water. The water originally came from the waterfall here. The water is very soft, it contains no peat as this is volcanic rock, and that's very important for the taste of our whisky. The second ingredient is malted barley. Malted barley is just natural barley that has been soaked in water, then allowed to germinate and then is dried. We then put this into a mill. We grind the barley down into what we call grist, and that's what is used for the next stage of the process. So this is the first stage in the actual distillery, and it's called the mashing stage. And this is where we put the grist, that's the ground down malted barley, and hot water. And what we want to do here is we just want the hot water to run through the grist and absorb all the sugar, because we need that sugar to convert into alcohol during fermentation, and that happens next door in the tun room. So we just go through here. Yeah, it's a really lovely smell in here. This is where fermentation takes place. These large vessels are called washbacks, and I'll show you inside this one here. So you'll also see these are very deep. These actually go right the way down to our bottom floor.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And we fill these to where we are standing, floor level, with our sweet liquid from the mash tun. So we put the liquid into here, and we then add the third and final ingredient, the yeast. This liquid has just been filled, probably at some time this morning. The yeast has been added, and you can see there's not much reaction in here at the moment. There's no heat, and there's no particular strong smell coming from here. But if I was to compare that to this washback here, which has been, I think the liquid has been in here for 2 days, you'll see there's quite a difference.
Oh yeah.
You can feel the heat that has been created during the reaction, and also the smell is the most important thing. It's a really lovely sweet smell, and you can really smell the alcohol that has been created.
That's strong. I'll have some more of that.
So as I said, that's been in here for 2 days.
Yeah.
This will maybe be around about 7 or 8% by volume alcohol by now. And we now call this liquid wash, and the wash is then pumped through to distillation, where we distill this liquid twice. And what we do here is we just heat up the liquid, and the alcohol evaporates before anything else inside of the still. So it's just the alcohol vapour that rises up through the copper still, and it then returns to a liquid down the condenser at the back. After one distillation, the liquid that we have is called the low wines, and this tends to be at about 25% by volume alcohol. Now that's nowhere near strong enough for making whisky. So we just repeat the process. Unfortunately, not all of the second distillation, however, is actually good enough for us to use to make into whisky. We're only looking to take the strongest and best quality spirit from this, and that's where the job of the stillman really comes into play. So this is the spirit safe, and this is what the stillmen use at Glengoyne throughout the day and the night to control and check the quality of the alcohol. They use these instruments here, the thermometers and hydrometers, to constantly check the temperature and the density of the spirit. And when they're sure that they have the best alcohol, they will then allow this to run under the road across to the warehouses on the other side, and the alcohol will then be filled into one of our oak wood barrels, and it will be left for a minimum of 10 years. Slanjava.
I'll try some of this thing.
Oh, it could turn me into a whisky drinker. I have to say, that was really nice. I think I'm converted to malt whisky.
Yeah.
Returning to the old Blaine Valley railway line, it's not long before you reach another watering hole on the site of the former Dumgoyne railway station. Outside is an interpretive board.
We have provided interpretation, and the strategy was to look at the West Highland Way in terms of journeys and to think about, in the past, the various sections, how they were traversed in days gone by before it was a footpath. So in the lower section, for example, it was a railway line, which is now the line of the pipeline taking Loch Lomond water down to Balmaha, and then that's redistributed throughout central Scotland. So it's interesting how these lines have changed over the years. We've got Highlanders footpaths and drove routes as we go farther north, military roads. And so we've used that as an interpretive theme for people walking the West Highland Way, for them to think a bit about where they're walking and what it used to be. So these are the sorts of things that we've provided, and of course the ranger service. That probably the best way of working with the public is when there's another human being meeting people face to face.
We are now in the Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park.
Well, I think I'm going to put some of my waterproof trousers on, because otherwise I'm going to have some soggy pants at the end of it.
On the West Highland Way, we were advised to prepare for all weathers. Before Drimmen, this attractive farm offers a range of accommodation, including these unusual wooden wigwams. Through the drizzle is our first glimpse of Conic Hill and Loch Lomond. We decide to make a detour down to Drimmen to have a drink and a look round. The village's name derives from the Gaelic word for ridge or rise. Drimmen is part of the ancient and very large parish of Buchanan, and was once also part of an historical area associated with the Earls of Lennox. The fifth Earl, Malcolm, was a solid ally of Robert the Bruce during the Wars of Independence. It is a pleasant village to explore and is home to the Clachan.
But here's the thistle, so this is where the West Highland Way turns off.
You could easily miss it, couldn't you?
It's very subtle, but I guess that's the point. Oh, this is nice. Two streams going together. Oh look, that's clear. There's the marker up there.
We pause for a chat with fellow travellers.
Are you going the whole way, or are you just doing part?
Not today.
Well, we're going all the way, but we're taking
going
7 days. So it's
Yes.
Inversnaid tomorrow.
Yes, Inversnaid next.
Carry on for, I think, the Bridge of Orchy. Without looking at the map.
I can't
Yes.
remember.
You
This
get
is the longest
jumbled
day.
up.
After that,
Yeah.
the maximum is
How
14
have you found
miles.
it?
Okay, it's been
Well, it's
quite
very easy, this part, because it's on the old railway.
Yes.
You haven't really been doing country walking until a bit farther up.
You find the way marking okay? And
brilliant.
Oh, it's
the
very
way marking's excellent.
the maintenance is pretty good too.
Very
isn't
good.
it?
Yeah,
Yes.
the gates and the latches are all new. So.
Oh, yeah.
That's a way to encourage people to do it. We did the Dales Way a few years ago,
Uh-huh.
and it really is difficult walking in quite a few
Is it?
places. It hasn't been developed like this.
What made you choose the West Highland Way?
Well, it's sort of the next one we wanted to do. We wanted a week's holiday, so we wanted a reasonably long walk rather than some of the others. I'm originally from Scotland, so it's quite nice to come back up and visit some people here at the same
Yeah.
time, if we survive.
Well, from the rain this afternoon, it's suddenly just opened up and it's absolutely gorgeous again and makes it just wonderful.
We are now passing through Garradban Forest, which was planted at various times during the last century, and felling is now taking place. This road comes up from Drimmen and represents the start of the Rob Roy Way, another scenic long-distance path to Pitlochry. The West Highland Way offers a choice of two different routes to the next village of Balmaha here. The lower route is a pleasant road walk for walkers with dogs. And the higher route, which climbs through the forest and over the Hog's Back of Conic Hill from 1,175 feet.
Oh, this is fantastic, isn't it? This is the top end of the loch, isn't it? Yeah. Towards Ardluey. Oh, the islands. You can really see for miles. Oh, that's Inchcailloch down there.
From this point, you can clearly see the islands in Loch Lomond, representing the Highland boundary fault line, dividing the lowlands and the highlands of Scotland. It runs from Arran in the west to Stonehaven in the east.
Well, they say the weather can change in minutes, and it certainly has. We've had all sorts.
Meaning the village by the water, Balmaha nestles at the foot of Conic Hill, beside Loch Lomond. It is perfectly situated for a visit to the beautiful island sanctuary of Inchcailloch.
This is the Oak Tree Inn, the first stop after our stretch from Milngavie. Oh, I'm glad we're here. The glorious sunshine. Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Can I get something to drink?
2 tenants, please.
2 tenants.
Audrey at AMS has dropped our luggage off, and it is a very comforting sight to see them waiting for us at the end of the day. Whilst staying at Balmaha, there is a tempting side trip on the ferry to the mysterious island of Inchcailloch. A few weeks earlier, before our walk, we visited the island. Since 1951, Inchcailloch has been part of the Loch Lomond National Nature Reserve, one of 5 islands included in the reserve. We are going to meet 2 rangers.
There's myself and Sandra, so there's 2 countryside rangers in Inchcailloch, and we work full time, and between us we'll cover every day basically. The main part on Inchcailloch is looking after the site and looking after the facilities, and my job is particularly about visitor management and engaging visitors and making sure we're interpreting and getting their interest and getting them to experience Inchcailloch in the most profitable and useful manner for them. So rather than walking straight through to the beach, we want them to stop and look at the oak trees and appreciate the Scots pine and understand what a doorbrattle is and so on. If you're walking the West Highland Way, one of the nice things about Inchcailloch is the view, and it's so easy. It's only 75 metres above loch level, and there's 2 views. There's one looking south across the lowlands, and because you're in the middle of the loch, you're getting a really good kind of view back. And then there's this one behind me which is looking north. And depending on the weather, you'll see further or not so far. But you'll see all the islands and you'll see the loch itself. We've got a lovely picnic area with a beach. In summer, when it's warmed up, it's very safe swimming because it's fresh water and it's sandy. A couple of barbecues and seats. And of course the oak woods. In spring, you'll see just a carpet of bluebells through the woods. You'll see like rivers of wild garlic because it grows in the wet areas, so it kind of runs down the hillsides. And it's a beautiful white flower, and you'll smell the garlic as you walk around. The largest mammals that you'll see are, we've got fallow deer, and they'll swim between the islands, and you've got a good chance of seeing them. We've got voles who you'll hear rustling around the wood rush. Otters will visit. I've never seen them, but we find they're spraint, which is a polite way of saying poo. We also have a huge diversity of birds. So there's a lot of migrant birds. They'll fly to Africa for the nice warm summers, and they come back to Inchcailloch every summer to breed.
Suzanne, tell me about the churchyard here.
Well, as you can see, it's a very atmospheric place. They think that there's been continuous burials here since the 8th century. An Irish princess came. She became St Kentigernach, and she's reputedly buried here 733 AD. And she had a very famous son. Her son was St Fillans, who you'll find out more about further up the West Highland Way. And the oral history says that she founded a nunnery here. There's no remains of buildings, but they would have wooden buildings anyway, so that's just tradition. There was a church built in the 13th century, so you can see the remains of the 13th century church walls. There's not many gravestones, but there's been continuous burials for obviously nearly 1200 years. One of the notable burials is this man behind me here. He's Gregor MacGregor of the clan MacGregor, and he's a cousin of Rob Roy, so he was the clan chief of the MacGregor clan, and he was buried here in 1693. The other thing, if you're here in the graveyard, just have a look at the ages of people when they died. There's people in the 18th and 17th century aged 88, 94. I had a preconception they would die young, but of course if you're living the healthy life and eating your porridge, you're not going to die young at all, and you're eating your own food, so yeah, but have an explore, it's a lovely place.
How long have people lived on Loch Lomond?
The earliest recording of people is 7,000 years ago. One of the more recent, if you can call it recent, is about between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, were the Rannoch builders, possibly Iron Age or even Bronze Age. And if you can imagine, there was no police, no armies, and there was lots and lots of predators, wolves and bears living on the hills. If you imagine it was not a very safe place to raise livestock and raise children, but an island is a very easily defendable and very safe place to live and have your family. So if there weren't enough islands, because there's under 30 islands I think in Loch Lomond, you built your own if you were powerful enough. So these Crannogs they're called, and they're artificial islands, and they built their own island, which is about the size of their round hut. And that was the place of retreat, like a castle. They wouldn't live in the Crannog all the time, but that would be where they would go in times of danger. And there's Kepinch, which is just off Clarinch, opposite Inchcailloch, which you can see. And it just looks like one little tree growing out of the loch, but that's the remains of one of the Crannogs in Loch Lomond. We did a visitor survey last summer, and nearly 70% of the people we spoke to had been before, and 100% of the people we spoke to are going to come back. So it really gets to people. It's a very special place. So.
By the harbour, there is a welcome board from the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. 200 yards up the road is their visitor centre.
The Balmaha Visitor Centre, which came along as a result of there being a regional park, the Loch Lomond Park, as it was prior to the National Park. And being where it is, it's somewhere where West Highland Way walkers can benefit from going in and getting more information and maybe picking up one or two items there. They do sell various bits and pieces for walkers. It's a superb area. We've got 720 square miles of prime countryside. Two of the large areas within that are owned and managed by the Forestry Commission. And it's quite an area when you consider that we have within the park boundary the Argyll Forest Park, which was the first forest park. I think that was 1935. And then over on this side of the park, over in the east, we have the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park. We have sea lochs, freshwater lochs. Obviously a big focal point is Loch Lomond. It is internationally known, and I have been told it's the most visited site by tourists, second only to Edinburgh. So we have many, many visitors into this part of the national park. But then we have such a range of landscapes within the national park. And that's one of the reasons why it was formed, because of the countryside around and the landscape that it has to offer.
The second part of our walk takes us 20 miles along the banks of Loch Lomond. The loch has long been a playground, being only 20 miles from Glasgow. Volunteers in the Ranger Service are maintaining the path. The pleasant woodland section of the way meanders around Orchy Moor Point and brings you to the wide shingle beach at Milngavie Bay. There is a ranger station opposite the car park. The bay is extremely popular with windsurfers. There are a number of crannogs near the shore. Much of this side of the loch is forested. Queen Elizabeth Forest Park reaches from Loch Lomond eastwards through the Trossachs, an enormous area acquired during the 1920s, mainly from the Montrose estates. It now provides a varied range of recreational opportunities, including walking, cycling and fishing. Beneath Ben Lomond, Lonely Guest House, Anchorage Cottage sits beside the shore. The West Highland Way undulates dramatically and deceptively through the pretty forest. We stopped for a rest and spoke to two fellow travellers.
How far have you come today?
Milngavie we've came from. I think that's about 20 miles we've done so far.
And how far are you going to?
We're going right up to Fort William. So we're doing it over 4 days.
4?
Yeah, 4 days. So we hope to finish on Monday night.
Any special reason why you're doing
for cancer research.
Really?
Yeah, we feel that everybody's had deaths in their family due to cancer. So
everybody's been affected with it some way or another. They know somebody that's died of cancer, or family or friends. So
I feel we've all got together just to do something.
9 years of just all got together and try and raise some money. Yeah.
Are you from the area?
No, from Livingston.
Livingston, we come from Livingston.
Why did you choose the West Highland Way?
Well, I never really heard it, but somebody else has heard through some. Well, I'd seen it in the paper a couple of months ago in the local paper. Somebody else done it, and we all just thought it was a good idea. We took it from there.
And there's
another 6 coming. There's another 6 on the way. So
another 6 about 3 miles back. So they'll catch up with us up at our next stop.
So where will you stop tonight?
Is it Rowan Dennon?
Rowan
Dennon.
The hostel just there, West End.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, good luck to you.
We'll bash on. Thanks a lot.
You need your stick there, didn't you?
I did. Walking along the shores of Loch Lomond in May through the woods is absolutely wonderful. The primroses are out and the bluebells, the mixture of them together. The bracken is just starting to come through and uncurl its heads. It's really beautiful when you see the glimpses of the loch and come across these little bays and inlets.
The holiday chalets through the trees tell us that we have arrived at Rowadennan and its hotel.
Behind me, shrouded in the clouds, is Ben Lomond, and the hiking trail for Ben Lomond starts here. But Rowadennan is also the end of the road. On this side of the loch, there are no more roads.
The road terminates in the car park of the visitor centre, and it is here that the trail to the summit begins. At 3,194 feet, it is a task not to be taken lightly. The West Highland Way continues along the shore of the loch.
We're about a third of the way along our journey now, and this is where Loch Lomond gets quite a bit narrower. The West Highland Way splits into two for about a couple of miles. One is a woodland trail and the other follows the shores of the loch. We're conscious that we're entering Clan MacGregor country.
Rob Roy MacGregor is a figure who still looms large in Scottish history. He was born in 1671, the second son of Donald MacGregor of Glengoyne, a lieutenant colonel and chief of a sept of the MacGregors. Rob Roy was born into a time when the Clan Gregor had been persecuted for almost a century, and in order to defend his herds and property, Rob Roy took to his own brand of 17th century protection racketeering. It is rumoured he held his unfortunate victims in a natural cave prison here until they capitulated.
Well, this stretch is a bit easier than where we've just come from, but we're almost at Inversnaid now, and there's the Snaid Burned and the waterfall. And this is Inversnaid, the Snaid Burn and the fall.
The Inversnaid Hotel is an elegant country hotel set in 65 acres of grounds, 50 yards from the falls, and overlooks the harbour. The hotel does cater to walkers, and there is a special entrance, albeit at the back, for walkers. Inside you can take your boots off and leave your rucksack and get refreshment. Not only does the Inversnaid Hotel operate a ferry for guests across the loch to Tarbet, but the landing stage also caters to the Loch cruiser. Inversnaid can be reached by a scenic, narrow and winding road. Further up the hill, the old church has been converted into a bunkhouse. Inversnaid even has a tiny school which has had as little as 4 children due to its remoteness. Loch Lomond has a great deal of wildlife, and it is here that a nature trail has been established by the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. The West Highland Way passes through the RSPB reserve near to the trail.
The reserve was first purchased in 1986 predominantly because of the Western Atlantic oak woodland, which because of the Second World War and obviously the wars preceding that, we had a shortage of timber, and the oak woodlands were felled for that timber, and therefore it became a rare habitat. We have a variety of habitats here: mountain and moorland, woodland, and the fresh water. With the wildlife, we've got feral goat, which no one's exactly sure when the feral goats first arrived at Inversnaid. But the goats that we have here we've got a couple of domestic type goats in amongst them, but the vast majority are true feral goats. And that's what's making it so interesting to the British Feral Goat Research Group. We have a population which we try and keep between 30 and 50 because of the regeneration. We've also got red deer and roe deer. On top of that, we've got badger, pine martens, which used to raid the old wooden nest boxes, have now changed to a wood creep nest box, and everything for a naturalist that's keen to get out there and see what's about. We've got great spotted woodpecker here, and they will only nest in dead wood, and they build a new nest every year, just chop out a new nest. And was it last year? I had some children from a primary school in Helensburgh up here. I was pointing out the nest hole to them, and a male pied flycatcher flew right in. So once nature wastes nothing. So this is fox dirt, and you can see it's been eaten, I don't know, probably been eating goat, I'm afraid to say. Well, it could be a kid or it could be a natural mortality, you're not too sure. But that's a bone of some type. You see that here? Yeah. Which is interesting because once I found a dead goat near a nest box, and the actual blue tit had taken the hair from the goat and had lined its nest with the goat hair, mohair. So a very expensive nest actually. But oh, it was lovely and warm. On a cold spring morning you could put your hand over the eggs and feel the heat coming off it. Yeah. Right, we'll see what else we can find.
It is surprising to think that there were once 400 people living here, engaged in tanning and iron smelting.
Well, this is someone's old shieling here. As we step in, we'll wet our feet. But as you can see, this in the old days, this would have been a combined house and byre. This is quite a large area, which would have been the living quarters. Possibly that extension there may have held the cow that they had, which was for the milk, and obviously had it calved, etc. As you can imagine, in these days we're talking about thatched cottages, quite a good thick wall, but I mean you could have a mother and a father and how many of a family all in the one building, and possibly even bring the goats in when the weather was really particularly bad. Not exactly very hygienic by today's standards. I wish you could time travel and go back and see what it used to look like. It'd be absolutely fantastic to see it. History is like biology. The more you learn, the more you want to know. And the more questions that opens up to you. Now look, that's goat. No, they're definitely about somewhere, but they're not showing themselves today.
We have wild goats up north of Rowan. Apparently they date back to that occasion when the Bruce retreated from Dalry. He came down the east side of the loch and he needed to cross to the west side to get down to Dumbarton, and he overnighted at this cave, Rob Roy's cave, and it's stated that he had a more comfortable night as a consequence of these goats, because they helped to keep him warm, because they slept up in the cave as well. I don't know what he smelt like the next day, because they're quite smelly creatures. And he granted them grass mail, which ostensibly meant that they were to be left to do their own thing and they weren't to be harmed, a bit like the Queen's birds with the swans. So it's quite nice to think of that sort of heritage and that link with these animals when we're walking the route and we see them as we go along.
Intrigued by Steve's story, we continued on the West Highland Way over some difficult terrain in search of Rob Roy's cave.
It's pretty tricky going on these tree roots.
Yeah, these poles are quite useful to keep you steady.
I stayed behind with the equipment and David took the camera.
I can quite see why Deborah declined to come with me. There are some difficult rocks to climb over with the camera. I was just thinking about turning back when I found a tiny clue. I guess this is meant to be seen by visitors out on the Loch cruiser.
Well, there it is. Still pretty inhospitable. Well, I found it.
Well, you've been gone a long time. I was starting to get worried.
Yeah.
I thought you'd fallen in or something.
Well, almost, but not quite. It was a bit slippery, but yeah, small little hole in the rocks there. I could tell though, because it got cave written in huge letters all over it.
The loch is getting narrower and there are more ruins to be seen. This part of the way is probably the most challenging underfoot, and we underestimated the length of time it would take to walk it. We had chosen to stay at Ardluey at the top of the loch and needed to catch the last ferry.
Oh, this is a scramble, Deb.
Yep. This is in the sunshine.
Yes, it is.
If the path didn't slow us down, the goats on the way ahead of us did.
Yeah, that's what the smell is.
Yeah, oh, yes.
It's not garlic, it's goat.
We're right in front of us.
It smells of wild garlic, doesn't
Well, I
it?
couldn't identify what the smell was.
No.
That's just what it seemed like. But that's obviously them,
Yeah.
because they're still up ahead of us.
Yeah, that's right, but you're blocking the way. Can you go now, please?
Well, they don't look terribly serious about it.
The path becomes easier as we approach Dún Bothy. This is one of two on the banks of Loch Lomond. The hut has been restored and maintained for use by West Highland Way travellers and affords a very basic shelter and a fireplace for an overnight stop. It might be our overnight stop too if we miss that ferry. We only just made it, but the ferry had broken down and the boat that came for us was a private one.
This is not the proper ferry, we're having some problems with it. That's alright. Oh, thanks, mate. Lovely, thanks very much. Sorry about the waiting game.
Thank you.
In the morning we found the ferry had been mended and we crossed the loch back to rejoin the West Highland Way to continue the next part of our journey through Glencoe, past the towns of Crianlarich and Tyndrum to the bridge of Orchy.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
This is the head of the loch, so the last we'll see of Loch Lomond now.
A new vista unfolds now. Glencoe will lead us steadily uphill to the Highlands.
Next stop is the famous 300-year-old Drovers Inn.
We are now at Inversnaid. Benglass Farm is one of several important overnight stops along the West Highland Way, offering refreshments, a shop, camping, chalets and several of the intriguing wigwams.
So we've come from Milngavie, that's all the way along the side of Loch Lomond to Inversnaid, but we've still got a bit of a way to go.
Again, that fought and died for, that we but held and bent and stood against them. Proud Edward's army, and send them homeward to think again. There now.
Excellent.
So what are you doing?
We're actually crossing Scotland. There's a walk goes across Scotland every May, and it goes. There's 11 start points on the west coast of Scotland, between Torridon and Ardrishaig down the bottom here, and over 250 people walk across and finish up at the end at Montrose. And it's called the Great Outdoors Challenge. It's quite an interesting event, and it started in 1980, and since 1980 I've been each May popping our way across Scotland. And it's such a great country to walk. And of course May is usually the best time to walk. So today we're dropping onto the West Highland Way and heading up to Kinlochleven to stop at the youth hostel at Kinlochleven tonight. I would like to bring this to your attention at the moment. Johnny's starting a new trend. This morning, he's got his gaiters underneath his trousers. Now we don't know where this has come from. We believe it's the Irish in him. Okay, we believe that this is the Irish in him, that he's actually got his gaiters underneath his trousers. Hey?
Have you not sorted him out?
He was feeding a horse.
Hey, today you've never laughed so much this morning. We're coming over the hill. There's this Garrian pony there, a big black and white pony. And John, being an Irish and lover of animals, he thought, I'll take a sweet out and give it to the pony. Well, the pony looked at the pack and he looked at what was in it, and he saw the chapatis and he saw the meat, and he thought, wait a minute, and a bag of crackers. He came along, he put his foot on the rucksack, he pulled the food out the bag, he emptied the crackers on the ground, he got the chapatis, he had those, he tried to get back and he stood on his foot, and it was, you've never seen anything so funny in all your life, and he actually ate all his provisions.
Everything. I mean, everything was on the floor. It took
the tent out. He got the sack.
Waterproofs, everything.
We
got photographs as well.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I've got on the digital. I'll show you a picture in a minute. On the digital, and he picked the sack up, shook the sack, emptied everything out. He's trying to get his food.
Stop it. Honestly, God, it was
and
crazy.
it was absolutely tremendous. And them were the things we were rolling about laughing. No, we were
it was empty.
Yeah, we were actually taking photographs while he was struggling to get his food back again.
And he took his tin whistle out.
He took his tin whistle out. He's got the tin whistle in his mouth. There it is, look at it. And here, Polly's trying to get her camera out while the horse is in the bag. John's trying to gather his stuffy, and Arthur's just laughing his head off.
He was just stood there laughing his head off all the time.
He just wouldn't give me his stuff back. And he's ate everything in his bag. That's why we're back at the cafe.
Sandwiches a lot. So I've got to restock now.
Yeah, well, there's plenty.
Yeah, well, this is why we ended up coming down here. We would have been headed north a little bit.
Crossing the Fallach, we walk down the road to Inversnaid to see the drovers. Down the 300 years of its existence, the famous inn has welcomed the great and the good through its doors, including the infamous Rob Roy MacGregor. The building of the military roads, the West Highland Railway, and more recently the West Highland Way have all encouraged travellers to rest a while here.
It was built primarily to service the drovers who were driving the cattle in those days. At that bottom end of the Fallach, the cattle who were coming there were making their way over from the west coast, from the Argyllshire coast and some of the southern lying islands like Islay and so on. And they would come up via Loch Lomond and Tarbet up to Ardluey, which is the Calf's Point, it translates as, and they would swim the cattle across the Narrows just at that point there, and then drive them up Glenfallach to meet up with the fellows who were coming from the northwest and the north, and then they would make their way down through Aberfeldy and Crieff and so on to the big trysts. So there were also other people who would travel in those days. There'd be various peddlers and whisky smuggling. That was sort of fairly rife, I believe, as well. So quite a lot of movement, and it was an ideal place at that point in time to establish the drovers. It's 300 years old, and it's absolutely jam-packed full of character. It's an amazing place. It looks its age, it has to be said.
But me and my true love will never meet again on the boggy banks of Loch Lomond.
We play there, myself and Ian as a group, on a fairly regular basis, and just the whole setup of the place lends itself certainly to the type of thing that kind of music we're interested in playing, and people just thoroughly enjoy it.
This time we'll have all the virgins singing, all the virgins. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny banks of Loch
As a part of the sort of journey of people who are walking West Highland ways and so on, it's one of these natural stopping places you would come to, just as it was for the drovers, way back all those hundreds of years ago.
They came in the night when the men were asleep, this band of guys, through snow soft and deep, like murdering foxes among helpless sheep. They slaughtered the house of MacDonald. Cruel what snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave of dawn. Cruel what's full that break Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald.
So a thoroughly nice place altogether, yeah. Life was tough. I don't think there can be any doubt about that whatsoever in the olden days. If you were to contemplate, as people do nowadays, walking along the West Highland Way with your Gore-Tex jackets and super thermal-soled boots and everything you can possibly think of, and then imagine trying to do the same thing barefoot, with a plaid over your shoulder and a handful of oats in your sporran to live off. Difficult altogether. Life was hard. Certainly as you come over the Highland boundary line, cattle were what it was all about. A person's wealth was measured by the number of cattle that he owned. Cattle led to, we hear all sorts of tales of inter-clan warfare and rivalry and murder, feud, all sorts of mayhem over the years. That was all based in cattle, black cattle. Blackmail, just a little thought that occurs to me. Mail is an old Scottish word meaning a rent or a regular payment. People like Rob Roy would approach local landowners and suggest that they would be quite happy to make sure that nobody stole their cattle if they would pay them a mail for their black cattle. That's the origins of the expression blackmail.
We are actually walking on an old drove road. What a sight that must have been, to see all those black cattle coming towards you, an armed drover in charge. The Falls of Falloch are a wonderful continuous cascade of whitewater hollows and rapids for the next mile or so. We are now accompanied by the West Highland Railway line for the rest of our journey to the Bridge of Orchy.
Lovely moments there.
The remnants of the ancient Caledonian pine forest are still visible here. The forest covered this entire area during the last ice age.
It's a bit uncomfortable for the people with the big packs. And I just know I've got a bend. Anyone with a big backpack is going to have real trouble. Imagine if a train went over just as you were underneath it. This is one of the old military roads, which definitely makes it a lot easier. This is going to lead us into Crianlarry.
This stretch of the way is managed by Breadalbane Area Rangers. We met Callum McNeil Ritchie.
What does your job as a countryside ranger entail?
Basically, we look at education with the local schools and visitors, and many other minor tasks like small-scale maintenance. Over the winter, we would do a lot of reporting back to our maintenance team about potential tree falls across the path, water damage. Occasionally we get floods in this area. There's a bit of water sometimes. And we would report back to get repairs in preparation for the spring and the summer. During the spring and summer period, we would actually be meeting people on the way, providing them with information, and probably doing more of the sort of wildlife monitoring and work with landowners. We tend to find it's actually a bit of a teamwork thing here between landowners and the Ranger Service and the rest of the West Highland Way organisations. So it's a busy time all year round, really. We don't go into hibernation as some people think.
Has anything unusual happened to you out on the way?
When I first started countryside rangering, I had to dress up as a Rob Roy type character. We were doing a Rob Roy guided walk, and it was more to do with the truth and not the romantic myth, if you like. But it meant that I actually had to get changed into full plaid and Highland outfit whilst up the side of a steep slope, waiting for the group to appear around a bend. I heard them coming, and having finally managed to get into the plaid after having slipped through beds of nettles and things like that, I did as I was meant to do, which was charge down the hill, screaming my head off. Having hit a tree trunk on the way, I've got to the bottom fairly safely, and got up and called out in Gaelic my greeting, and watched some West Highland Way walkers who weren't with the group walk past me, totally ignoring me because they thought, who was this oddball? And then when the group finally did turn around, obviously partly with my accent, they said, oh look, an English Rob Roy. So what was meant to be quite a historic guided walk became more of an enjoyable, fun day out actually, so it was good fun.
So I reckon this signpost makes it just about halfway.
Yeah, it's Crianlarry. In which case, I think it's time we went down to the village and had a break.
Okay.
We're halfway.
Yeah, I deserve it, honey.
The first thing we see at Crianlarry is the charming railway station. The station cafe is open from 7:30 in the morning until 8 at night, from the end of March until October.
It's quite central here in Crianlarry. Do you get quite a few tourists?
There's a good percentages outdoor people, walkers, climbers, that kind of thing up here. What you've got to understand with Crianlarry, it's central point, and to go anywhere north you must come through Crianlarry. You know, if you're coming from the east coast or coming from up Glasgow, Loch Lomond, you've got to come through Crianlarry. And this is why it's signposted so much. You know, you can see Crianlarry miles away sort of thing, and you think, oh, this must be a big place, but when you arrive at it, it's just a small place. That's why it's signposted like that.
And what railway lines come through here?
Yeah, this is the main West Highland line, Glasgow to Fort William and on to Marlaig, or here it goes to Oban. Quite a scenic route, very, very scenic. It takes in Loch Lomond and Loch Long on its route up here, the two big lochs, and it goes up over Rannoch Moor and away by the big Harry Potter
Yes,
bridge here, as
yes.
you've seen, and it goes all up there. They're very nice route this. I would recommend it to anybody.
During the golden age of steam, Kinlochleven used to enjoy a variety of engines passing through, often double-headed to get up enough power for the gradients.
Well, compared with what's there now, diesels and that, yeah, they were totally out of character altogether. Steamers, I don't know, you felt something when if you ran a steam engine there, that you had power just below you. And of course you had the thrust as well.
What were the engines that used to be on this line?
Well, there's a picture of them there, some of them. The Glens, the K2s, they were called after lochs. And well, they're lovely engines to work on. Nice. Especially engines, if they came from England, were corroded with lime. And they ran up the West Highland because the water here was pure, very pure at that time. They were poor steamers, and gave them 2 or 3 runs up here, and they improved by each run. And they took them back to Cowlayers in Glasgow, or Eastfield in Glasgow, and they washed the boilers out and then sent them back to where they came from.
For almost 20 miles, the West Highland line is our companion.
You rise very steeply from Ardluey to here, Kinlochleven. You drop into Kinlochleven bit enough, but you must, Ardluey is just a wee bit above sea level, and Kinlochleven is about 800 feet, so you climb that the whole way, a very steep climb. And it's also steep going to Tyndrum from here again, and it's downhill into Bridge of Orchy, round the Horseshoe Bend and all that. You'll enjoy that walk if it's, as long as it's reasonable weather.
Yeah.
Kinlochleven lies at the place where traditional through routes west-east and north-south meet, and rests forever in the shadow of Ben Moor, along the southern flank of Strathfillan. The village has excellent rail connections and offers a range of accommodation, including a youth hostel and guest houses.
We've had conflicting reports from fellow walkers about whether to book or not to book in advance.
I would certainly say definitely book. There's no way, because accommodation's sparse in some of the areas, you know. I mean, even in Kinlochleven, there isn't a lot of accommodation, and further down, when you get to Inversnaid, other than Benglass Farm and the Drovers and a couple of smaller guest houses or B&Bs there isn't much accommodation. Some people use tents, of course, you know, and that's one way of doing it. That's a hard way of doing it. The walk's hard enough without carrying all that. There's a huge variety of accommodation, from, you know, 4-star guest houses like ours to the wigwams, which are good value for money, and bunk houses. There's bunk houses. There's a youth hostel in Kinlochleven. People in the area have responded to the West Highland Way demands. During May, it's certainly a very large part of our business, and we alter the way that we work to suit the people we've got. I mean, people walking the West Highland Way that want an evening meal, which we provide, they want something substantial. So, you know, we'll make sure that the meal fits that accordingly. We have, all our rooms are en suite. We have a bar with over 50 different single malts in it. That's my hobby, the whisky. And I need to try them, of course. If someone asks me, what is this one like, I've got to be able to tell them, so that means I've got to keep trying them. Because of the West Highland Way, we've adjusted where we now offer a free pickup service. So people could actually stay here for 3 nights if they wish. We'll pick up from Inversnaid on the south side to Inversnaid in the north. And so people could stay here for 3 nights, so they don't need to pack their luggage up and move their baggage every day. They know what they're coming back to, have a wee dram by the coal fire if it's cool at night, that sort of thing, you know. Huge amount of wildlife, very good for wildlife. We have a resident pine marten at the lodge house here, so the scenery is unbeatable. I mean, you don't even need to go out, you just need to look out your bedroom window at the scenery.
So, on we go to Tyndrum.
There are spectacular views of 3 Munro peaks, and the way threads a course through trees and provides exciting vistas high above the glen.
Nothing to
Have you
eat.
got something in your pocket then?
No, nothing to eat, but they might bite, so you won't get too close.
Okay. You won't, will you? No. Hey, you leave my ferret alone.
He's going to go for the ferret.
We have now reached St Fillans Priory and Graveyard. St Fillan, an Irish monk, came to the area to spread the teachings of a Christian way of life to the Scots and the Picts. He was the son of St Kentigern, who we know from further back down the trail at Inchcailloch. The priory was probably a monastic site in his memory, built in the 12th century. A relic of St Fillan, his arm bone, was used as a talisman on the eve of the Battle of Bannockburn to great effect. Strathfillan Farm, another good stopover on the West Highland Way, has a now familiar range of overnight accommodation. Crossing the A82 leads on to another important historical site, the Battle of Dalry.
The Battle of Dalry was really more of a skirmish than a battle. 1306, and King Robert the Bruce was making his way back from Methven through this country into the area that we now know as Dalry, the King's Field. They were ambushed by a chap called MacDougall of Lorne. MacDougall of Lorne had a long-standing grudge against the Bruce because one of his kinsmen had been killed by the Bruce. At some point in that skirmish, a couple of the followers of Lorne grabbed hold of the Bruce and tried to drag him from his horse. The Bruce cut them down, but one of the men grabbed at his cloak and pulled the clasping brooch that held the thing together and fell dying, but with it in his hand, so that was lost. It's known nowadays as the Brooch of Lorne, and I believe is still in their possession to this day. There's a little tarn, a little lochin, where apparently the Bruce and a number of his followers, because they were being so badly pressed and really outfought, they were totally outnumbered. They threw most of their weapons into this loch just to lighten their load and then escaped, but on horseback. A relatively important part of our history taking place there, because that was the beginning of the Bruce going on the run with Campbell of Argyll and people like that. But it was also the beginning, if you like, of the Bruce, his wanderings, and ultimately his return in triumph to his people and Bannockburn. The site itself now is marked by a small commemoration, but essentially it's just a relatively rough piece of land. So you walk past it, next time you're up, stop and have a look at it. Feel it. The atmosphere is there.
On we go to Tyndrum, another small town on the West Highland line. In fact, it boasts 2 stations, serving either Oban or Fort William. A very noticeable store on the main road is the Green Welly Stop, a family business in its 3rd generation, providing Highland hospitality to one and all. It is also the proud winner of the Loo of the Year award. As we leave Tyndrum, right on the trail is a welcome and rare facility in the village hall for those that want to re-establish contact halfway along the West Highland Way.
Behind me on this stretch out of Tyndrum is a lovely illustration of 3 modes of transport, the ancient and the modern.
We are leaving the Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park now, and the West Highland Way continues to be managed by the Highland Council for the rest of the journey.
Another cattle creek. Let's hope it's taller than the last one.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad.
This one's all right, yeah. It's even open to the sky.
The neat and tiny village, Bridge of Orchy, stands on the busy A82. The village consists of an elegant Highland hotel with a few houses scattered around, and surprisingly boasts a post office, fire station, and a railway station, which is now a bunkhouse.
I'm crossing the Bridge of Orchy, which is the start of what promises to be the most scenic stretch yet of our walk along the West Highland Way.
The River Orchy is crossed by a very substantial military-looking bridge, believed to have been built by a Major Caulfield about 1750. Caulfield, Wade and others were responsible for building many of the military roads in the area, but why were they built?
1715 Jacobite uprising, and once that was over, done and dusted, the king called for General Wade and asked him to make some military roads with a view to keeping the wild Highland clans, the ruffians, in check. And essentially that's what's happened. General Wade is the person who's most closely associated with the military road building.
Wade's successor, Major Caulfield, was responsible for all of the military roads that make up a large part of the West Highland Way.
The roads were built to allow garrisons to move, to begin to cut off the availability, I think you would call it, that the Highlanders had to totally outflank people, bearing in mind the Highlanders were people who were extremely strong, tough, resilient, used to walking colossal, nowadays unimaginable distances over wild, desolate terrain, carrying arms, everything they needed. They were pretty nimble people, and they could fight at the end of the day after doing all that. They were hardy, no doubt about it. Quite often the military roads utilised parts of the old drove roads that people had been using for centuries to move cattle from the north and the west coast down into the Falkirk. It wasn't totally following, but wherever they could, they would take advantage of the terrain, because the people who were driving cattle, they had an eye for it, and very often the road builders had the advantage of engineers and so on with them, so they could do things like cutting into rock and perhaps following a slightly more advantageous route that you couldn't do with the cattle. In later years, it was taken from the military and put into civilian government control.
The morning temperature starts to rise. Time to shed some layers.
Oh, that feels a bit fresher. A bit better now.
This is beautiful Loch Lomond, a glacial lake that formed as the glacier receded from the Rannoch Moor area in the last ice age. Desolate Rannoch Moor is only a few miles away now and is crossed by the West Highland Way. Evidence of the old Caledonian forest still remains, and there is even a crannog. Below is the Ranger's House, Forest Lodge, and the Inveroran Hotel, virtually all that is left of a deserted township there. The Inveroran Hotel has a long history as a droving inn. Of its many guests, William and Dorothy Wordsworth stayed here in 1803. We meet the Blackmount Ranger.
How many visitors, what sort of visitors do you get coming through here?
On a really busy day in the peak season, we could have 1,000 people come past us. Most days you will find a couple of hundred in the summer going past. The midges come out, and that tends to put a bit of a break on it. And I think the midges are the best conservationists out, otherwise we might be inundated with people and not have anything left for our enjoyment. Most people are very litter conscious, very conscious of what they're doing out here, and wish to enjoy it. And I'm grateful for that. It's a few people that make it
jolly uncomfortable for the rest. I think we need a motto that says, leave only your tracks behind. And let's enjoy it together, not destroy it.
There is a very pleasant campground by the burn at Inveroren.
This is one of the sad parts of our lives here. A lovely campsite, it's on peaty ground, and with the new access code there shouldn't be a fire. And it says you can have fires in certain conditions, but don't leave any trace of it. And there's the trace they've left. And of course the debris they just leave as well, they couldn't care. Bits of aluminium,
Yeah.
just throw it down and walk away.
What sort of work does this mean for you now?
Well, I'll have to remove all this, dig out that burnt soil, and then steal the grass from somewhere else to re-turf it.
It's a lot of work that's just totally
it's a waste.
unnecessary.
That's the worst part of it.
Yeah.
And abusing what's a pretty good facility.
Yeah.
If we left it like this, I suppose it just add more and more fires would come in here. But remove all the traces, and hopefully the next lot of people won't be so keen to put a fire in here.
And where do your walkers come from?
The whole world. I've had them from Singapore, Australia, Alaska, down to Chile. I've spoken to them from all over, and you can't believe where they get the information, what brings them here is as varied as the places they've come from. The internet has certainly opened up an incredible avenue for people wanting to find out. But also the person from Singapore, a friend of mine told me about it, and off they came to walk the West Highland Way. Most of the stretch that I'm involved with is the Highlands. It goes from agricultural use with grazing through to what appears to be abandoned countryside. In actual fact, it's managed for the wildlife. You will see fenced off areas mainly to allow forests to regenerate. And we go through to Rannoch Moor, which is really beautiful. But like everything beautiful, it needs to be treated with care.
What should the walker prepare for such a stretch?
Well, they said to me when I first came here, give me 10 minutes of your time and I'll show you Scotland's weather. You can get anything at any time. Come prepared for whatever, because you might not need a jacket or a jersey, but you might need waterproofs and all the thermals you've got in the same day. So be careful, but it is beautiful.
And what about communications on somewhere like Rannoch Moor? If in an emergency or
Most of the Rannoch Moor that I cover has got a mobile signal. We do have black spots, and if you happen to get into one of those and there is an emergency, you need to break a party up, keep somebody with a victim, and the others are going to have to go and get help. If you send somebody, write down what you want the authorities to know, otherwise the person will probably give the wrong information. And you either go back or forward to get the signal. It depends which way. If you've been in contact, go back to where you know you've got a signal and call the responsible authorities and they will respond to you.
What do you like most about your job?
What a beautiful place to be in God's creation, to enjoy the wild outside countryside here. I just enjoy every minute of it. It is beautiful. It's a lovely place to be. Unfortunately, there's paperwork, and that seems to catch up more and more, but I'll put that off for a wet, horrible day. And everybody's screaming, why haven't you replied? Well, I'll reply on a wet day. And a day like this, I'd be crazy to sit in an office.
This is Glen Orchy, subject of many Highland painters and photographers. Before the end of the 18th century, the military roads in the Highlands were falling into a state of disrepair. The engineer Telford was commissioned in 1803 to build new roads and bridges in the Highlands. Our next stretch across Rannoch Moor is one of these roads. It went out of use as a public road in 1933.
So from Milngavie, Balmaha and Loch Lomond, and Inversnaid, Kinlochleven, Tyndrum, Inveroren, we're here. Not that much further to Fort William now. We've left the woodland behind and now we're going to cross Rannoch Moor.
On a fine day, it is difficult to imagine how dangerous Rannoch Moor can be in wild weather. Extremely exposed, there is virtually no shelter. Bar Bridge is the point of no return, which is halfway across the moor. There is no civilization until King's House, 5 miles away. Telford's old road keeps to the higher ground to avoid many of the bogs that would have caused problems on a lower route.
It's amazing how far we've come today.
I know, I was just looking at that. When you look at this mountain here, and we've just come round that, across the moor. It's just spectacular, it really is.
And Glasgow is somewhere
Long,
way behind in the distance.
way behind.
What amazes me is the string of lonely people wandering this track.
Or you see the track stretch out, and then suddenly a little speck comes into view, and you see someone else walking.
We start the long descent past the White Corris Ski Centre to the King's House Hotel. David and I pause to discuss a tip from the 2 Scottish builders we have met on the trail. They had thoroughly recommended Skin So Soft lotion as an effective midge repellent for the summer when the insects become a real pest. The King's House has been an inn since 1800 and has a long history associated with salt smuggling and cattle droving. It was used as a barracks for the King's troops in the 17th century. The hotel stands at the head of infamous Glencoe, in the shadow of Buchail Etive Moor, the shepherd of the glen that guards the junction of Glen Etive and Glencoe.
It's getting warmer.
The lonely A82 has taken a separate route across Rannoch Moor and is briefly touched by the West Highland Way here, before descending into Glencoe. The way gives tremendous views of Glen Etive and magnificent Glencoe. The scenery, quiet and empty now, holds a sinister tale from the winter of 1692. After the breaking of the clans by the King's troops.
It's referred to as the Massacre of Glencoe. The numbers involved weren't huge. It's been estimated that 40 people were killed and perhaps as many again died in the snow as they ran from their houses. The reasons for the massacre taking place were to do with politics. It was to do with the fact that the MacDonalds, who were not above a bit of murder and savagery themselves, it's got to be said. The MacDonalds had got themselves almost beyond the pale, and the government decided to teach them a lesson. Most of the clans had sworn an oath of allegiance to the king. MacIan, the clan chief, mainly due to weather, had been late in getting his oath sworn in at Inverary, this was used as an excuse to wipe out the MacDonalds. And the main reason why it's become a very important part of Scottish history is because it flew in the face of the whole notion of Highland hospitality. The troops who carried out the Glencoe massacre had been billeted there for 12 or 14 days. The MacDonalds were none the wiser that there was anything untoward. These troops were being billeted, they were being looked after, but all the time it was being plotted to exterminate them. The actual order said to spare no one under 70, and especially the old chief, take special care to make sure that he get captured and then killed. My understanding is that the troops who carried out the deed were Highland militia. Many of them would be Campbells, led by Campbell of Glenlyon. It was a plot really to exterminate the MacDonalds. The troops were there. The order was given secretly, and in the very, very early hours of the morning, the troops rose and started to slaughter everybody that could lay their hands on. Not all of them followed orders, it has to be said. There's one particularly nice tale told of a soldier going into one of the huts, the little hovels that people lived in, under orders, of course, to kill the family. And apparently what he did was to cut the little finger off the baby that was in the house, and he smeared its blood over his bayonet, but then allowed everybody to escape out the back door. Many years later, the soldier, who by this time was quite an elderly man, was in an inn for some food and some drink, and the people of the inn happened to be talking about the massacre in Glencoe, and recognising the soldier's cap badge, which he still wore, they asked him what part he had played. So the soldier told them how he'd cut the little finger off the baby and then allowed the rest of the family to escape. And at that point, the innkeeper said, in that case, you're very, very welcome to stay here. And he put the guy up for the rest of his life, which was really quite nice.
Getting nearer to the Devil's Staircase.
There is no escaping this huge climb. We met Tim resting before the big push.
Did you come up from Milngavie?
Actually from the centre of Glasgow. I walked from, I think it's Buchanan Park, and all the way from there, yeah, taking it fairly gently. But in fact, yesterday ended up doing 2 days in one, just because I finished a bit early. I had eaten a lot of chocolate, a couple of pints of Guinness, and that sort of saw me through the next day over Rannoch Moor and down into Glencoe, which is absolutely stunning walk. One of the most beautiful I've ever done.
Fulfilled your expectations?
Absolutely, yeah, it's great. And in a way it's easier than you expect, because it's wild and beautiful, but there is almost always a pub at the end of the day where you can get food and a drink, and more often than not there's a pub halfway for lunch as well if you want, which makes life a lot easier, not carrying so much food, not carrying so much water, eating better, so that the next day's easier. It's great.
Did you camp or do B&B?
I've had one B&B, one youth hostel, and through 2 or 3 camps.
So a nice mix.
Yeah, and the hostels at the beginning to sort of ease you into it a bit.
And have you found everyone along the way?
Everyone's very
helpful?
chatty, aren't they?
Yes.
Extremely chatty, and you tend to see the same people, the same groups. There's sort of say 8 or 9 groups who bump into every now and then, and everyone's keen to see how each other's getting on, and share blister anecdotes and and so on and so forth. It does help you along. It helps you get along.
Up we go on this excellently maintained zigzag military road.
How you doing down there?
Slow but sure.
Yeah.
Finally, we are rewarded with views of magnificent Ben Nevis. We are at the highest point of the West Highland Way. The top of the Devil's Staircase is 1,798 feet. Before plunging down to Kinlochleven at sea level, we pause for a while to absorb the wonderful scenery on such a clear day.
A lot of work gone into preparing that.
We meet 3 Belgian lads on the descent.
I think the West Highland Way is cool because when you start at Milngavie, it starts really flat and just like national parks, little parks, and then at Loch Lomond you get up and higher, and next to the water 2 days, and especially with this weather, it's real nice. And then just after Loch Lomond, then up, a few mountains up, and then you get the Highlands, and that's the best part of the whole trip.
How did you find out about the West Highland Way?
Oh, I don't know, if you zoom in on that guy over there. He told me about it. He read somewhere about it.
Hi.
I don't know whether you hear about West Highland Way. His uncle did it, I think.
Yeah, my uncle made
his uncle
the way.
made the trip.
And, like my uncle and me, we were like a bit the same. Like always, like experiencing like nature and stuff. So it's a great place to be. Yeah.
You enjoyed the walk?
Superb. Yeah. We've got great weather since Saturday.
Did you pack rainwear as well?
Yeah. Now I'm carrying like a waterproof pants, like a poncho, my jacket, like spare pants, like everything for the rain, but not seen any rain so far, because we've seen twice some rain, and just when we got our poncho on, it stopped raining. So.
For 1 week, only sun, and we didn't have like sun cream with us. We had like a little bottle for 3 minutes, so it's like great, yeah. And we just saw like a lot of deer up here and a golden eagle, so it's really, yeah, a nice experience. Yeah. Nice thing to do with friends.
Yes.
The Blackwater Reservoir was constructed by navvies at the turn of the last century to provide water for the Alcan aluminium works at Kinlochleven. The growth of Kinlochleven reflected the growth of aluminium as it was increasingly used in manufacturing, particularly in the motor and aircraft industries. The abundance of water and hydroelectricity here was perfect for aluminium manufacture. The town was proud of the purity of its metal and became prosperous. But these days are gone. Worldwide markets for aluminium have driven the price down to such a point that the Alcan works had to close in 2000. New schemes and ventures have been created in the town. A small museum chronicles Kinlochleven's history. There is a warm welcome here to campers and travellers on the West Highland Way.
Our luggage has been carried faithfully from hotel to guest house, all of our journey along the West Highland Way. As we leave Kinlochleven, we caught up with Robert, who runs a baggage transport service with his wife Audrey.
We carry luggage along the West Highland Way from point to point, basically door to door as well. I
typical day would be starting from Milngavie, leaving perhaps hopefully at 9 o'clock, meeting everybody, getting the bags on, up to Drimmen, Riverdenning. Before lunchtime, hopefully Kinlochleven would be nice, getting to Fort William for about 3, and then it would be 2.5 hours back down to Glasgow. Sometimes people take the lift, we bring them back down to the airport and off they go. It's self-employed, but you can't just take a day off. Yeah, it's 200 days of the season that you keep going. It's a fantastic office window. You can't get better in Scotland. Maybe a little bit less rain would be nice, but there's no better place to be than driving up and down, helping people. We do about sometimes 350 miles a day. At the worst, I've seen me do 450 miles. That was an absolute epic, but that was because it was so busy, there was no accommodation in all the normal little towns and people were staying miles away. And because I dropped the luggage to wherever they're staying, it just put my miles on. My wife Audrey plays a little part. No, I think she plays a huge part. She does all the admin work, all the telephone work, carries bags. She broke 3 ribs last year, kept on going. Fantastic.
So how many months of the year are you flying up and down this route?
Generally from the middle of March to the start of November. We were working those months, but recently we've cut it off and we finished around about the middle of October. 7 days a week throughout the year, rain, hail or shine.
Have you walked the West Highland Way?
I've walked it start to finish once, and probably I've walked more of the Rannoch Moor. That's my favourite part than any other part. There's a story of the 4 chaps who'd done it in 4 days. I mean, it's possible to do it in 4 days, but it's tough going. And I ended up dropping 2 of them off at the accident and emergency in Fort William. They just could not walk. Their feet were so bad. So the moral of the story is, put the miles in, train. If you want to walk 20 miles, train 20 miles. You can't just go out for a walk on the dog and expect to complete the West Highland Way. Some people do, but it's not all fitness, it's miles in the legs. I think I would like to bring my kids and walk the West Highland Way when I'm an old man and they're up a little bit. That would be fun, because they sometimes come along for the ride in the van, and I don't think they really know what walking is all about yet, but I'm sure they'll find out. They'll be able to carry me.
Just as we had descended 1,800 feet to sea level at Kinlochleven, it is no surprise that the West Highland Way starts as a steep climb out of the town. We have just 14 miles left. Through the trees, our glimpse is of the tidal Loch Lomond. Now for a much flatter trail through the glen of Rannoch Moor, once again a military road.
Gorgeous day.
Absolutely magnificent scenery.
There are many walkers out on this beautiful day.
Why are you walking today?
We're on a practice walk for something called the Caledonian Challenge, which we're doing on the 18th of June, which is walking 54 miles of the West Highland Way in under 24 hours.
Excellent.
So that's the challenge, and this is the team name, Brave Tarts.
Oh, the Brave Tarts.
Excellent.
See the bravest when
Shoulders
we got your
back,
chest.
tummy
Yes,
on
video.
Yes.
So
How far are you going today?
We're going
12
to,
miles,
you're
I think
going to
we've gone
Glencoe.
from- yeah, Fort William.
Yeah, we're going to stop for lunch in Kinlochleven and then we're going on to Glencoe.
And then walk back this way, or?
No, we've left a
go around?
car,
Yeah.
all logistical stuff. We've left a car in Glencoe and we'll take that back to Fort William, staying there tonight, and then driving back to Edinburgh tomorrow.
So how do you think your chances will be in June?
Excellent.
We'll
We'll get there.
4 miles in 24 hours.
Yeah. If it's like this, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
Actually, we're saying it's almost too hot.
It is. It's absolutely stunning.
It is Best stunning. weather today.
What kind of competition will you be up against?
Well, there's people actually
A
run it,
serious
would you believe? They run
Yeah,
it.
there are
Some people who run it.
Yeah.
Some people who just do bits of it.
Yeah.
And then lots of people just...
It's a personal challenge. You've also got to fundraise for it, so that's the other idea. Is you've got to raise £2,000 as a team, a minimum of, and so that was part of the challenge, and then the actual walk of the day. So it's not competing against other teams; it's just doing it for yourself.
Personal challenge.
Are you walkers in general?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes,
We've all got dogs.
Yeah.
And children. More than walking the dog.
Yes.
Oh, so fit ladies then.
Relatively.
Relatively
Yeah.
fit.
Well, children as
I've
well,
never done
yeah.
anything like this before, so this is a challenge.
Yes.
Definitely.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Look at that. That is so clear. Makes you just want to get in.
There are 2 ruined cottages in this glen. This one particularly, with remains of a motor vehicle, doesn't seem to have been abandoned very long ago. It is an evocative reminder of just what a lonely and hard-won existence it must have been out here. Spying a Land Rover on the trail, we caught up with 2 rangers.
Myself and Angus were the maintenance rangers on the West Highland Way, and we have a stretch from Tyndrum to Fort William to look after. Today we're actually patrolling between Llanrwar and Kinlochleven, just checking the path out for any damage and picking up litter and things like that.
Our duties really can be anything from just clearing water bars and drains, to felling trees, out speaking to the public, repairing bridges and making sure that the way marker are repaired and painted.
We have the provision of information as well, emails and phone calls, and we speak to people face to face out in the West Highland Way and give them information on the route and advice. We're quite fortunate in the north with the military road, and it's old civil roads as well, and that we have a good foundation for us, for the walkers and for us to maintain. But without maintenance, the way would quickly fall into disrepair. It is, in many places it's in disrepair anyway. What we're trying to do is keep a check on things. It's very difficult with the weather, with the terrain, with the loose materials. I mean, things haven't changed a great deal. 250 years ago when they first constructed these roads, they realised then that they would need to maintain them. And this section of path we're on right now is Military Road, probably dating back to between 1748 and 1753. It was built by a Major William Caulfield. Now, some of the sections are under protection. They're historic monuments. The 2 sections in the northern half of the West Highland Way are under such protection are between Bridge of Orchy and Inveroran and King's House and Altnafe. And before we can carry out any works on these sections, we have to get permission from Historic Scotland. And then once work is underway, we have an archaeologist present for a watching brief, and just in case if we should discover anything. But for the rest of the military road, when we are working on it, for example, if we were working on this forward here, repairing it, we would try and rebuild it, reinstate it in the fashion that it was originally done. We try our best to keep an eye on the sections of path where money has been invested in recent years. Devil's Staircase is a good example of that, where we try and keep the water bars and cross drains clear, just to keep in check of it and that it doesn't get out of order.
What do you like most about your job?
Well, I love working out in the hills and I also enjoy the challenges that the different seasons bring, and have such a variety of duties to do a different job almost every week and different days. I also enjoy meeting a lot of people out in the way who are walking the West Highland Way and hearing their stories and how they're getting on, and I also enjoy the company that I work with.
What a lie. Oh, can I just say one more about Ben?
No, don't say one thing about it, because you mentioned Ben Race. We don't want a minute. Don't. No, don't mention that Ben Race.
Right, okay, I'm just going to speak about the Ben Race for a minute. Each year in September, the first Saturday in September, they have the annual Ben Race. It's perhaps one of the toughest hill races in the country. And myself and Angus are doing it this year. But I normally do it, and I've yet to get under 2 hours. But Angus is going to do it in 1:40
Oh,
this
no
year.
chance. No chance.
With all the talk of Ben Nevis, we are eager to catch another glimpse of the highest mountain in the UK.
So we started in Milngavie and we've come all the way up to here. We're nearly there. It's nearly 95 miles.
This is Bla O'Carrain, and the only road we have seen for miles. This can take you down to Fort William. However, the West Highland Way takes us on through the steep forest. We are on midge alert and have applied plenty of Skin So Soft to keep them at bay. At last, another fine view of Ben Nevis. The Ben is not showing you its best angle, but its sheer bulk and domination is impressive.
I think we're going to cool off a bit now. It looks like Fagorn Forest.
Need a torch down here.
I know. Great though.
Not far now, Deb. How you doing?
My right knee's playing me up a bit now.
Yeah.
I'm slow on these up the hill bits.
Yeah. Same as that.
We're coming out of the forest. Looks like we're at the head of the glen.
Oh look, Fort William down there. Oh, it's so uplifting to come out into the glen after that long slog up the woods.
And see your goal in sight. Not far now.
All that is left is a simple but uninteresting long road walk out of Glen Nevis to Fort William.
There it is. The end of the West Highland Way.
Oh, big thistle.
Oh look, congratulations from the Ben Nevis Highland Centre. That's nice.
So we made it.
Done 95 miles and it's been more than a journey, it's been like an odyssey.
Adventure, all the people with me.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, but I've never, just the Highlands and everything that means has been really something. It really has. I think we need a celebration.
I think we need to. What do we got?
And as it's Scotland, it had better be whisky, Dave.
Yep, Scotch whisky. You first.
Oh, thank you. Here's West Highland Way and the fact that we did it.
Yeah. Cheers.
That's good.
Not too long behind us were another triumphant pair.
How'd you feel?
Tired. My legs hurt.
Where did you come from today?
Kinlochleven, so
yeah.
not too far. But
And how long does it take you to do the whole walk?
we did it by the guidebook. The guidebook broke it down into 8 sections, so we did it in 8 days.
What made you decide to do the West Highland Way?
I suppose it's just for the challenge, and it's absolutely beautiful, the scenery, and we come from London, so we don't really get to see much of this at all, so it's a totally new experience for us, and it's great.
Was it worth it?
Oh, definitely. I don't even know it existed. They found it on the internet, and this is how I do. Blame him.
Blame me, yeah.
That was a memorable journey.
Definitely. Stay with me for the rest of my life, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, there were a couple of cattle creeps that were a bit low for you with those packs, weren't
Oh, yeah, that was actually... I almost got stuck in one of those because I'm 6'6" and the pack's massive, and it was quite funny. But I got through on the other side, and there was a bunch of American tourists who gave me a cheer, so that was alright.
The first thing to encounter in Fort William is the well-placed Highland Centre at Nevis Bridge. The town has one long shopping street with clothing, food and gift shops jumbled together. There is plenty of accommodation here for the West Highland Way traveller before returning home, either by coach, minibus or train. The town has a fascinating West Highland Museum close to the Tourist Information Centre. There are also boat trips from the town pier to Seal Island in Loch Lomond. Another stop you can make is back at the visitor centre in Glen Nevis, and if you have time, to walk up the great mountain itself. At a height of 4,406 feet, it certainly represents a challenge, remembering the bottom is virtually at sea level. There are plenty of warnings and advice in the centre, with lots of local information and history. Originally, Fort William was called Inverlochie. Its primitive fort built by General Monk between 1654 and 1655. This was replaced by a stone fort in 1690, and the town was renamed for William of Orange. The remains of the fort now host the marker stone for the start of the Great Glen Way, another spectacular long-distance trail. Although the fort withstood many conflicts, its eventual downfall was the advent of the railway, which flattened a great part of it to build Fort William Station. And it is from here we begin our journey home on the West Highland Line, which follows for at least 20 miles, part of our challenging and captivating walk along the West Highland Way.